Hello, beautiful beings. It's Kristy Wood-Giles here, and I'm so excited to be back with Charlotte Tomlinson. And we have so much to talk about. Last time we really focused on a lot about nature and its health benefits, but there's really so many other areas to Charlotte's interesting life and background as a classical musician and performer. But that's not even why we're here to talk to her, because we want to talk to her about this book she has written. It's a novel for 9 to 11-year-olds, and it's called Cocoon. There's such a great backstory to why Charlotte wrote this and what she's doing with it. And so we're going to talk to her about that and a lot more. So Charlotte, welcome.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to talk to you because we really haven't had a chance to get in deep about your book and, why you wrote it. So maybe just give us a little bit of background and lead up to what happened to get you to be inspired to write this book.
Oh, that's a tricky one. I mean, I would say, because as a musician and as a teacher, I've taught children all my life, all my career, my adult life, and it's just through the interaction of children and starting to learn the way they work and the way they think, and particularly and sometimes you have really special relationships with children, nephews, nieces, or other people's children or whatever. Anyway, this book sort of came about through in that way because of my connection with children, and it's actually, I'm just going to explain a little bit about what it is, because it's got a slightly, I'll put it up, it's got a slightly unusual title. Cocoon actually is Russian. It's a Russian word, and it means a sort of noble, magnificent horse. It's not the standard word in Russia. It's not the standard word that the Russians would use for horse. It's more of a sort of something slightly different. Anyway, so Cocoon is basically, as you can see, if you can see the front cover, it's a magical horse. And it's a little bit of a giveaway, but these two half-Russian brothers find in the house of where they're living, their landlord's house, which is just above their basement flat, one of these huge, great big old Victorian houses we have in the UK, and they let themselves in after midnight when the professor, their landlord, has gone to sleep, and they discover this rocking horse, and the rocking horse comes alive after midnight. And the rocking horse can fly. So the rocking horse takes them on these extraordinary adventures. And I suppose, really, without giving too much of it away, I suppose it's a hero's journey. It's where these two brothers meet some extraordinary characters. They meet incredible challenges. They have a mission. They go to a very dark country that's underground. They go to a really light, happy, magic and miracles country. And they learn from both sides. And then they're sent on a mission by 12 eccentric, colourful old crones.
Oh,
Were completely crazy and wise, and the grandmothers, and all of this. So the crones train them up to go on this mission, and basically what they're doing is they have to depose the evil king. They have to get rid of him, and in order to do that, they have to learn about themselves. They can't just go out and get a gun and shoot them. That's not what it is. They have to learn to find their own courage. They have to learn to deal with their panic, their anxiety, their terror, their fear. And they have to learn to sort of overcome these things. And this is just one out of many. But in other words, what they have to do is they have to learn about emotional and, in some respects, you could say, spiritual intelligence in order to manage this mission. So it's very symbolic of our world, of our lives, all sorts of things, but it can be taken on lots of different levels. And children tend to take it straight as an adventure with depth. And when I've talked to children about it, they've just said, I love the fact that they that they learn this and they learn that, but it's all still fun. So anyway, I haven't even answered your question about why I've written it, but but that's a little bit about it. And I suppose, why have I written it? Because I just want children to be empowered. I want children to start learning to manage their feelings, manage, to learn that they can manage the life around them, the world that they're living in, which can sometimes be so challenging, as it is for all of us. And if children can start learning these things when they, young, what kind of incredible adults could they be?
That's amazing. It is a really timely message. Definitely seeing a lot of children and teenagers struggling. And what I like what you touched on was the whole concept of learning while still having that sense of fun and adventure. And, sometimes we're also just taking things far too seriously. And as much as we want them to learn how to manage all these things and be able to deal with the tough times and tough situations, at the same time, we also still have to remember to have fun and adventure and all those kind of things. So it's really interesting to me that you've melded the two so well. And I really think it's, how we learn better when we're having fun, right? So I can see all the children taking your messages so well, almost absorbing them so well without even realizing, because of the fun and adventure that comes with it. It's feels very magical and whimsical at the same time.
Yeah, and I have to just talk. I mean, I talked about the old crones, but I don't know how easy it is to see this here, because it's right at the. If I just put it, that illustration, can you see that?
Very well, yes.
So they're crazy. They're completely crazy. So these old women are very wise. They're very in some sense, they're very old school, that sort of stuff and nonsense. Oh, don't be so ridiculous. That kind of thing. But they're very wise, and they're very much the grandmothers, and they're very clear about who they are. Yeah. And they sort of, they won't stand for any nonsense, but at the same time, they really care. And so that's a slightly unusual thing for children. And especially, children now, they're not, when I was younger, I mean, we had these quite strict teachers and at school who could be quite dismissive. The crones aren't dismissive. There's a sort of wisdom underneath their slightly quirky, strict kind of ways. So they're quite rich characters, and I think children find them intriguing and fascinating. They don't quite know what to make of them, because if they ever have anybody strict, it's usually negative and critical, whereas these women are not, because fundamentally they're on the boys' side, and they want them to win and to win through.
Wow. And it almost ties in another message that I've been noticing. Children are, what's the word, yearning for, I guess, because it's that whole concept of finding our uniqueness and, not feeling the need to have to be like the group or the crowd, and sort of celebrating, people may not understand all aspects of you, but there's something really valuable and good in all of us. And if there's parts that are different, that's actually something to be celebrated. And then you also are able to then see that part of those people that you do have in common, or that can help or support you, or you can help and support them. And just like almost loving everybody for how they are. And the more we celebrate that, the more we can discover all these benefits in one another, so it's kind of cool that I really think that's a strong message for the age group you're looking to, that is being missed right now. We're really scared to show our uniqueness and to be different, but that's how we find who we are and our value.
I think one of the things that the feedback I've got from children who've read it is what is really interesting, because there are two boys. Two boys is not common. If I I published this myself, and one of the reasons I published it myself is because I knew that traditional publishing was less likely to want me to have two brothers. They would want a boy and a girl. They'd want sort of nice and neat. They'd want, you know, all of those things. So, but I like the fact that there are two boys, because I think boys are given less attention in this kind of genre of book. It's now got to the point where there's lots for girls, and then the boys don't read it. You know, but if the boys are the focal point, and also then they're more likely to read it. And the boys have been very taken by the characters, which is very interesting. And the thing that I wanted to also stress is the two characters are Vanya and Mishka. They're the two brothers. They've got Russian names. I'll talk about that in a second. They're very, very different characters. So Vanya is the older one. He's drifty, he's dreamy, he's shy, he's very creative. He discovers his artistic qualities in the journey, in the book. And he's the one who can, there's something called mind speak, which is basically a way of getting across the idea of telepathy to children. So it's mind speak, which is how they talk to Cocoon, because Cocoon doesn't talk. So they talk to Cocoon through mind speak. And they have to learn, and Mishka starts learning first. Mishka's much more outgoing, extrovert, you know, classic boy. He loves football. He sort of launches his way into things. Vanya tiptoes his way into things. And Mishka starts learning first out of the two boys, and takes him a bit of a while, but Vanya goes straight in there. He gets it straight away. So, well, of course it's easy to do mind speak. Can't you do it? So that the difference between the two boys is really marked. And I think I had a number of boys say to me, well, I'm more like Vanya, my brother's more like Mishka, and I'm more like Mishka, my brother's, you know, so they can recognize themselves. And the boys love it, but the girls recognize themselves as well. The girls don't have to have girls to be able to relate. So right. You can say, well, I recognize myself in Vanya, and they love the way that the two characters develop and get more confidence. So, you know, by the end, Vanya's just so full of confidence, and he's really becoming himself. And that's how they manage this mission.
That's amazing. It makes me think of one time I was having this conversation with someone, and we were sort of digging down as to what self-esteem is. And I was kind of searching, you know, even for definitions. And really what I found was esteem is our value. And so I said, we really, and we aren't necessarily born with self-esteem. It's something we develop as we go through our life. And really we develop our value by experiencing things we value. You know, it's so we've sort of misled ourselves about how we develop self-esteem, and really it's this discovery that you're talking about, and discovering things that, you know, the two boys discovered things about their personality traits that helped them do one thing, and maybe the other one was more successful at something else. But as they discovered things they were interested in, they discovered their value, they discovered things that they did well and, you know, were skilled at. And so it's literally the epitome of what we were trying to describe, that, you know, and as adults, we keep discovering things we value and our value that we have in ourselves. But life is really a journey of discovering who we are. And, you know, you've really nicely put this in this clearly very multi-layered story. So it's amazing. You talk about already so many different threads that you're able to weave through the story. It sounds like it would be the kind of book you just can't necessarily stop reading. You'd want to read it all in one sitting.
Well, they do. I have got the most gorgeous photographs of lots of children with holding their books up like this, and they sort of read it all in one go, and it was all lovely. Oh, it's just gorgeous. So they do. And also, I mean, the really interesting thing is I wrote this well before any hint of Russia, Ukraine, and everything that's going on at the moment. And
Yes.
I don't want to talk about politics at all, but what I do want to say is that people are people, whether they're Russian, Ukrainian, or anything else. Children are children, whether they're Russian or Ukrainian. And, you know, these boys are half Russian. So they come over to England from St. Petersburg, which is where they were brought up with their Russian father who's died. That's the beginning of the book. And they come over back to London with their English mother. And yes, and they are half Russian and they have Russian names. And so we've got this kind of weird, you know, craziness going on. All of a sudden, we're not supposed to like Russians. Well, I beg your pardon, but, you know, Russian people are Russian people, like we are who we are. They're just, if we may not like what the powers that be are doing, that's different, or the politicians or the presidents or the this, we may not like that, but the people are still people. And those Russian children are still Russian children. And one of the themes, you know, one of the backstory theme is that they come over and they are fish out of water in London, because how different is London from St. Petersburg? You know, in every respect. So they come and they've got Russian accents and they can't fit in at school. So they're bullied and they're miserable and they can't, you know, London is gloomy. And so that's the starting point from which they then develop.
You're right. It's such a great message, but also very timely, and really just that lesson that when we don't understand what's going on or we want to make a judgment, you know, it's really up to us then to educate ourselves more, to understand better and figure out what's really happening behind the scenes. And these two boys, whether it's pre or post crazy world events, are just two boys that deserve to be understood better, right? And, you know, nothing assumed, nothing decided or judged. And, you know, if we could all just do that with a little more effort, we'd be in a far better place, I think, on so many issues, you know. So it is really kind of heartwarming from that angle, and maybe a great timely opportunity for people to use your book as a bit of an education tool on, you know, Russian boys and just boys in general and children and what they're going through, you know. So I would hope that we could also use it to help us figure out what's going on a little better.
I think it needs to be a fun book first, an enjoyable novel first, and everything else will float in through osmosis. That's what I'd like anyway.
Yes, well, it sure sounds like that's what it is able to do. So
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit about the course that you did? Because I think, I don't know if the course, actually before that, I just want to go backwards. And can you explain your interest and link to, you know, use the Russian names and boys and the title, the Russian title for the horse? What inspired you to do that? Is there a link?
I'm basically, I mean, I've known a lot of Russian children. I mean, there are a lot of Russian children who learn instruments, and, you know, it's been a theme, an ongoing theme. So once I'd made the decision that, you know, to have Russian children, then why not have a Russian name for the horse? And the two countries that they go to also have Russian names, and they mean Russian things. I mean, so the land of Isputania is the land of tests and challenges, and the land of Chudisa, which has to have an accent on the A at the end, is magic and miracles. So so Russians know what they mean.
Wow, that's amazing. It's kind of, that's sort of the epitome of life right there, right? The challenges and tough times, as well as the magic and light. So that's really interesting. I love that you went into that area, you know, you were inspired, you were led clearly, right? To go. So yes, and then going to your course, you actually developed a course that?
It's a workshop. It's a very, very simple workshop. That's the one on the Ascended Masters. And I'm going to develop more if there's a need for them. This is a very simple thing. It's what I did in schools with children. So I did 9 workshops before Christmas. And it was absolutely fascinating. I've got a real sense of the children and how they felt about it. So, and the workshop that I've developed is basically a simplified version of that, where I read the prologue and the first chapter. And then so in the workshop with the children, in live workshop, they would then ask questions for about 15 minutes, which was totally delightful. They'd say things like, what's it like being famous? I have to say I'm not famous. And how long did it take to write? And all the questions they had, loads of them. So that obviously, because I've recorded this, I can't remember whether I actually, after I've read it, I chat a little bit, and then, but I'm not answering questions because there's nobody to answer because I've recorded it. Then I read another excerpt from the book, and that's what I did with the children live, which is an excerpt where Vanya learns to paint. He's taught how to paint, and how he's taught by a little gnome called Piku. And Mishka's trying as well, but Mishka can't do it. It's not his thing. He gets really fed up. So, and it's how the Piku relates to the 2 boys and how he encourages Vanya, and shows him how he can paint big, and so Vanya gets really excited about it and carried away. So I do that. I read that excerpt, and then I give them an activity which I call painting with words, where they have I put up a slide with a whole load of paint pots, different colors, and each one has, so they need to find, I'm giving it all away, aren't I? Maybe I shouldn't say that.
I'm intrigued.
Okay. But basically they're having to learn how to describe something. I won't say what it is, something that's important to them in different ways through their different senses, and find words. So it's a way of finding words. And when I did this with the children in the schools, and this is actually quite interesting to talk about, what I found absolutely fascinating was, they started doing this. So they started sort of thinking about something, and okay, I'm in a cafe, so what can I smell? I can smell coffee, I can smell, and they'd write down these things. And then in the different classes, I'd have these hands coming up and they'd say, can I draw pictures as well? And I said, well, of course you can. Didn't think anything of it. And they would go, oh, they were so over the moon. They were so excited that I'd given them that freedom. It's just simple. All they had was a piece of paper, and I think they might have had coloured pens. They may not have even had coloured pens. I think they just had a pencil and a paper. And they were they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And what they loved was the freedom of being able to write any words. I said, you can write all over the page. You can write upside down, back to front. And one boy wrote me a letter afterwards and said, I wrote my name backwards 7 times. And it's just, I just love it. It's like, that's what he wanted to do. And this had opened them up. And the whole point of the exercise was a freedom, is to say the beginning of creativity, certainly with writing, is to feel free. So you just throw things down. And then you learn the next stages. You learn to edit, you learn to structure, you learn all sorts of other things, all skills. But right at the beginning, you need freedom to be creative, and anything goes. And they loved it.
Wow, that's amazing. Because when you first started talking, I was actually going to do a typical author question, because I've written a book about my journey through healing, but I was thinking to myself, it must be amazing to have your creative mind, to have come up with all of, I can't imagine. I don't have that level of creativity. So I was going to ask you, how did you foster that? How did you develop it? And you almost answered it perfectly, where, and I'm imagining all these children just all of a sudden feeling inspired to write a book or get into more arts. But just like you said, you use the word, the freedom.
Yeah, that's the freedom. They don't have it. And I had no idea, because I don't teach at schools. So I had no idea. I mean, I don't blame the teachers at all, because they're restricted and they have to do certain things and jump through certain hoops. But just the simplicity of me saying, them asking whether they can draw pictures as well as write. Well, of course. For me, it's automatic. But it's knowing and how easy it is for them with that simple thing, that simple bit of permission to find those ideas. They had no problems. They said, oh, I'd like to do this and I want to do that. And I said, and I had these letters saying, I really liked the activity. It was so fun, and it was so, and they would use these words like fun, and I felt so good. I felt so in, and they were expressing how they felt about doing things so simple.
Wow. It is when you describe the one child saying the freedom in writing your name backwards, but that's amazing. It's so true. Just to think, to do something so harmless, but to really feel like you're just kind of challenging yourself to go out of the box just a little bit. And I can see, I'm feeling the opportunity for creativity to develop just by that. What I love the word using just freedom, we don't teach or foster freedom in a lot of ways, but wow, what they could develop if we did.
What I find fascinating is, we've got all this focus on phones and video games and this, that, and the other, and I'm not going to slam any of them because they have their place. But this was one page of blank A4 paper and a pencil, and they were ecstatic.
Wow.
And it's like, what does that say? What does that say? What message is that? I mean, how simple it is to encourage our children to be alive and alert and awake and try things out, and what happens about, and if we really take interest, and with the little the extract that I was talking about, where Piku teaches Vanya, the key thing about that is that I put in that Mishka doesn't like it. He's no good at it. He just puts great big X through his painting, and he just says, I don't like this. And Piku says, it's not your thing. It's okay. You'll find what sparks you off, what inspires you. And then he just kind of relaxes and kind of just sits down and watches and doesn't. And then the next chapter, he does find out what he loves. And, and that's when he comes alive.
And it's so true, even when we were talking earlier about life is about finding things we value. And really, we have to just keep trying, right? Some things will be us and the next thing won't. But if we give up because we're finding things that aren't us, that's information too, right? Yes. The things we don't like are telling us something about, who we are and what we might like, but we just can never stop looking, trying, testing things out to see if it feels good or if it doesn't. Mm-hmm. Well, kudos to you. You're definitely fostering so much in these children, and it's just amazing messages and learning experiences. Now, I do know that a lot of your musical background and working with children with music led you to, I guess you could say, understanding kids, being inspired to how you could help them and guide them. Can you talk a little bit, one, about your musical background as well as your work with children and music?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been teaching for years and years and years. Piano is my main focus. So I haven't taught in schools, or if I have taught in schools, it's been one-to-one instrumental lessons, which is different from class music. But right from the age of 17, I've been teaching. So I've been teaching a long time. And yes, I started off teaching children. I only have one under 18 now. I have very few under 18s, but that doesn't mean I don't love kids. It just means that I've shifted slightly. So my focus is on much more advanced students. I teach, university, music college students, that kind of level now. And so that's one thing. And what my musical work has developed, there are parallels with the writing and the story. So my musical work has developed into this area, which is supporting mostly classical musicians, but I do work with folk, rock, jazz, pop, all sorts as well. And supporting people in terms of performing. So performance anxiety is huge. It's rife amongst musicians, as is physical tension. So, somebody may not feel that they're anxious or have nerves, but they might be very, very subtly tense. And this is something that I've been doing for a number of years, and it's become, I don't know whether it's the same. I do think it's the same in the States, in North America. I'm just wondering, because in the UK, certainly there is a taboo around owning up to being anxious about performing. There's a big taboo. And in the students, it's starting to be talked about more. At the conservatoire level, it's starting to be talked about. But in the profession, in the orchestras, it's still taboo because people are worried, unconsciously here, that if they talk about their so-called weaknesses, which aren't weaknesses, but their anxiety or their nerves, they may not get work, they will be seen to be weak, all of this sort of thing. So there's a whole big issue, issue about it. So anyway, I've started developing that area. So I'm now kind of known for working with musicians with performance anxiety, generally speaking, and I travel a lot and work at university level and conservatoire level, internationally, pre-2020, internationally a lot, and also starting to do some work with some of the big orchestras as well, the ones who are open enough to, have me to do stuff. So anyway, so that's really what it is. But I suppose if I were to drill down and find what is the essence of what I'm doing in that work, which is what I put under the category of performance coaching. So when I'm working with a musician who might have an online or in-person session and they say, I'm terribly nervous, I can't, and a lot of it's worse from the lockdowns and everything. People have lost a lot of confidence. I will be, that the essence of what I'm doing is helping them get all the stuff out of the way, all these sort of obstacles out of the way, so that they can really be who they are fundamentally and perform with their own expression and without all of these blocks and these anxieties and this all these issues. So in this, the parallel with Cocoon is that in Cocoon, I'm showing that two children, if they learn certain things in terms of emotional intelligence, and they can actually become empowered and they can be who they really are. It's very, very similar to what I'm doing in my sessions with musicians, which is, let's get the stuff out of the way so you really can express yourself. And what's so fascinating is that, and especially when I do masterclasses, which is so, if I'll very often do, not now, but pre-2020, I did lots of this, 2-hour classes at conservatoires and various places, where I'd give a presentation about how to manage your nerves, and then I do a masterclass. Now, a masterclass is basically my style. I'd have 4 people in an hour, 15 minutes each. Somebody would play, didn't matter what instrument, an excerpt of some bit of music, and invariably they would be terrified because they're playing in front of their colleagues, their peers, their fellow students. It might be their teacher, it might be the head of department, and they're very, very nervous. So by helping them understand themselves, by giving them some practical tools, some how to free up, how to physically, how to be more settled in their body, how to manage, how to stop beating themselves up, or whatever it might be that they were doing, 1 or 2 key things, and before the end of that 15-minute session, their playing had transformed, and it was nothing to do with practicing more.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's the thing that I think is so important. This is like, so my thing is, in the classical music world, can be a bit stuffy, not always, but it can be. And there's very much a focus on practice the notes, get the style, interpret the, bow down and worship the great, oh wondrous Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, who can do no wrong. And, that is like the utmost priority, that you have to interpret these absolutely just so, and you can't make any mistakes, and this, that, and the other. And my thing is, okay, that's great. But what about the human being who's behind that? What about the human being who's playing that music? If that human being is not happy, hasn't had enough food, hasn't had enough water, is feeling really tight, is really anxious, feeling they're going to be judged, they're not going to be expressing that music. Not really. I mean, the professionals can do a very, very impressive job because they're so skilled. But even with top professionals, and I have worked with them, the top soloists and people, even with them, if you give them some tools and just help them calm, my God, it just takes off. So
Wow.
It's incredible.
It is. And really, I feel it's what the whole world needs right now. And when you were talking about, sometimes people don't really even think they're stressed or having anxiety, but I think that's a function of the world we live in right now. I'm always telling people we're living at such a chronic level of stress that we think that's normal now. And then when something happens, like, them having to perform, or just something at school, or it's taking everybody up to such a high level that they can't handle it. It's overwhelming. And I feel like that's actually the chronic issue we're dealing with in all aspects right now. And I'm seeing it all the time. And it is true that it's almost like maybe anxiety is a bit of a gift, because it helps us be forced to listen to our body, to pay attention and say, okay, what is it you're trying to tell me? What is it that you need to take care of yourself? And all of a sudden the mind and body start to communicate a little bit better. We have no choice but to do that when the anxiety gets to that level, or we will never be able to manage it. And in a weird way, it is a gift. And clearly you are helping them find that gift to discover who they are uniquely. And I just wish so many more children can understand and learn that process, which I guess really, yeah, you've taken that and put it into your book for them. So what a great tool that you've been able to give them with your book, really, from all of your experience. So it's kind of heartwarming when I see the challenges that are out there and what everybody's going through, that you have done this in a nice little exciting package for them to be able to learn all of that. But it's literally the most important thing, I think, we do need to learn in life, but especially right now, is really getting to know ourselves and, find our uniqueness, I guess, would be what I would say.
Yeah, I just think this last 2 years, I see around me, and you see it too, I know, so many traumatized people. I mean, we are all dealing with the after effects of trauma, because you can't be locked down and have loads and loads of fear.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I think that was my connection. Loads of fear around in the air, from the media, from the television, from the radio, everywhere, and not have that impact you. I mean, it's huge. And for children to see masks, people's faces blocked off, and all of those, and in some cases have to wear them themselves, it's very, very frightening and very, very alienating. And I think that, we just need a bit of nurturing, generally, and yes, I mean, this is just my small way of contributing and wanting to contribute. I would love actually to be able to take the workshop idea and develop that. So I'm just waiting to see if there's any demand for it. But if there is, I could do online workshops with bunches of children. There's all sorts of possibilities for doing that, all over the world. That's all possible. And that's something I'd love to do. But yes, I'd love children to have access to the book so that they can feel the nurturing that's sort of come through it, and the support of them that basically has been fed through it from me.
That's amazing. So yes, let's talk about that. It's available on Amazon, right?
Yes, it is.
And is that Canada, the US, as well as the UK?
As long as you go to Amazon.com, and it's, yes, I mean, it's, you'll see, I mean, we can put the link below, but this, I mean, it's very distinctive. I ought to tell you about the illustrator, actually, because she's 82.
No way.
Yeah, she's 82.
Wow. Wow.
And she's fabulous, and she's old school, and I love the old school nature of it. But anyway, she's a delight, total delight. And yes, you can get it on Amazon, and Amazon.com for anywhere, that Amazon.co.uk if you're in the UK. And that's basically it. Please write a review, because the more the merrier. It really helps me. And the other thing is the workshop. I mean, I'm available if you contact me through my website, and that it would be great to, I can either design a workshop, or I can do the one that I've already got, which really works well. It's been tried and tested. It would be, I'd love to do that. I'd really love to do that.
And that your website, Charlotte Tomlinson?
CharlotteTomlinson.com, yes.
Okay. Awesome.
And the page of Cocoon is just /Cocoon, but we'll put that down below, I think.
Yes, all the links will be down below for sure. And yeah, they can access your workshop through the Ascended Masters store as well. So we'll have a link to that too.
Yes.
Well, that's amazing, Charlotte. And you know, it's interesting. You recently post our last conversation sent me a picture about bluebells that are in the woods, and it was interesting because I was looking it up a little bit, and it was mentioning that bluebells are a symbol of kindness and gratitude. And then you also sent a picture of deer, which I've always associated with love and caring, and so I thought it's kind of probably not coincidental, of course, but that you had sent that to me, and I wanted to reiterate that, because I think what you've done is such a gift to help people, such a kind gesture to help children. And I thought it was a great opportunity for us to express our gratitude for what you have been able to do and provide. And I really appreciate you coming on to talk to me about it. There's, I think, a million more links that we could talk about that the book is providing, but I just really encourage people to go and read it, to buy it and read it and share it and pass it on as well, because it's a gift. And thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Kristy, and it's lovely to chat to you. Thank you.
We'll talk again soon.
Yes, we will.